Part 5. Lessons Learned. The secret conversations between General Minho and Commander Thalmos continued for weeks. They spoke carefully at first, like warriors who still expected betrayal. But slowly, understanding grew between them. "My people came here believing you were primitives," Thalmos admitted during one conversation. "We thought conquest would be easy." "We were wrong. We thought you were monsters," Minho replied. "We thought you wanted to destroy us for pleasure. But I see now that you are soldiers following orders just like us." These conversations remained secret. Neither side's military would approve of them. But both men saw what their commanders refused to see. The war could not be won by either side. Only ended. The turning point came when Thalmos shared information that changed everything. The Velkari Empire was collapsing. Rebellions had erupted on 12 conquered worlds. The economy was failing because the Empire spent too much on military conquest and not enough on its own people. The High Command was fractured, with different factions fighting for control. "We need to end this war," Thalmos said, "but the High Command will never accept defeat. They would rather see Earth destroyed than admit failure." "Then we do not offer them defeat," Minho said. "We offer them peace with honor." The plan took shape slowly. Minho would convince the United Nations to offer peace terms that allowed the Velkari to claim victory. In exchange, the Velkari would withdraw from Earth's solar system and provide technology to help rebuild. Both sides would claim success. Both sides could stop fighting. The hardest part was convincing their own people. Minho presented the idea to the United Nations Security Council. The room erupted in anger. Representatives from nations that had suffered the most were furious. "Peace? After what they have done?" the Russian delegate demanded. "They killed millions of our people." "And we killed thousands of theirs," Minho replied calmly. "This war has brought us to the edge of extinction. We can continue fighting until nothing remains, or we can find a way to survive." "It sounds like surrender," the Chinese delegate said. "It is survival," Minho corrected. "The Velkari Empire is falling apart. If we make peace now, we can ensure they never threaten us again. If we keep fighting, we might win, but there will be nothing left to save." Dr. Jiwan spoke next. She looked different now, thinner and older than her years. The war had aged everyone. "I have been working on weapons to destroy them," she said. "I could finish my work and give you the power to wipe out their fleet. But I have learned something important. Every weapon we create, every new way to kill makes us more like them. Maybe the real victory is choosing to stop." Her words carried weight. Scientists around the world had followed her research. They trusted her judgment. Yuna added her support. "I have been inside their computer systems. I have read their messages. The Velkari soldiers are tired of war too. Many of them want to go home. They are not monsters. They are people who made bad choices." The debate lasted for hours. Finally, a vote was called. The motion passed by a narrow margin. Earth would offer peace. On the Velkari side, Thalmos faced an even harder task. The new commander, Vekral, refused to consider peace. He called Thalmos a coward and traitor. But Thalmos had spent months quietly talking to other officers, planting seeds of doubt about the endless war. When Vekral ordered another major offensive, half the fleet refused to follow the command. The officers said their ships needed repairs. Their soldiers needed rest. They were tired of dying for a conquest that seemed impossible. The High Command, facing rebellion at home and mutiny in the fleet, had no choice. They reluctantly agreed to negotiate. The peace talks were held on a space station quickly built between Earth and the Velkari fleet. It was neutral ground, hastily constructed but functional. General Minho led the human delegation. Commander Thalmos represented the Velkari. The negotiations were tense. Both sides had demands. Both sides had anger to overcome. There were moments when the talks almost collapsed, when old hatreds threatened to restart the war. But Minho and Thalmos kept pushing forward. They had become strange friends through their secret conversations. They understood each other in ways their governments did not. The Treaty of Sol was signed 3 months later. Earth insisted it be signed in the ruins of Sol, as a reminder of what war cost. The terms were carefully worded to give both sides something to claim as victory. The Velkari would withdraw completely from the Sol system and acknowledge humanity as a sovereign species. They would provide technology and resources to help rebuild Earth. In exchange, Earth would not pursue the Velkari fleet or interfere in their territory. Both sides would exchange prisoners and establish diplomatic relations. Most importantly, both sides agreed to tell their people they had achieved victory. The Velkari would claim they had taught humanity civilization and were leaving the planet in humanity's care. Earth would claim they had driven off an invasion and won their freedom. It was a lie, but it was a lie that saved millions of lives. When the treaty was signed, something unexpected happened. Kelnus, a young Velkari soldier who had been captured early in the war and released as part of the treaty, asked to stay on Earth. He had been treated well during his captivity and had come to respect humans. He wanted to help rebuild what his people had destroyed. His request was approved and others followed. 37 Velkari soldiers chose to remain on Earth. They became ambassadors of a sort, helping humans understand Velkari technology and culture. The Velkari fleet departed Earth's solar system on a gray morning. People around the world watched the ships leave. Some cheered. Others wept. Everyone felt relief. General Minho stood in the ruins of Sol with Kelnus beside him. The young Velkari had become his translator and assistant. "What will you do now?" Kelnus asked. "Retire," Minho said. "I have fought enough. Now I will help rebuild." "What about you?" "The same. I will teach humans about my people, and maybe prevent another war." They watched the last Velkari ship disappear into the stars. Dr. G1 converted her weapons laboratory into a research facility focused on peaceful technology. Using Velkari science combined with human innovation, she led projects to clean polluted areas and rebuild destroyed cities. She never built another weapon. Yuna continued her work with computers, but now she helped establish communication networks connecting Earth to other species in the galaxy. She became one of humanity's first ambassadors to the wider universe. Lieutenant Hyon survived the war but never flew in combat again. Instead, she trained the next generation of pilots, teaching them not just how to fight but why peace was worth protecting. She taught them that true strength was knowing when not to use violence. Commander Thalmos returned to the Velkari homeworld expecting execution or imprisonment. Instead, he was seen as the commander who ended an unwinnable war with honor. He became a reformer, pushing for the Empire to change from conquest to cooperation. It was a long, difficult process, but slowly the Velkari culture began to transform. The war had lasted 18 months. Over 7 million humans died. 3,000 Velkari soldiers died. Dozens of cities were destroyed. But humanity survived, and both species learned lessons they would never forget. 20 years later, Earth was thriving. The cities were rebuilt, better than before, using a combination of human and alien technology. The planet had become a center for trade and diplomacy in the galaxy. Former enemies visited as tourists or business partners. A memorial was built in Sol, on the site where the treaty was signed. It listed the names of everyone who died in the war, both human and Velkari. It reminded people that war had victims on all sides. On the anniversary of the treaty, Minho returned to the memorial. He was old now, his hair completely gray, walking with a cane. He stood before the wall of names, reading them silently. "Hello, General," a familiar voice said. Minho turned to see Thalmos approaching. The Velkari was old too, his silver skin darker with age. "Commander," Minho greeted him. "I did not know you were visiting Earth." "I come every year," Thalmos replied. "To remember. To honor those who died because of my mistakes." They stood together in silence, two old warriors who had become symbols of peace. "Do you think it was worth it?" Thalmos asked. "The war, the deaths, everything we went through?" Minho considered the question carefully. "I think war is never worth it. But what came after, the peace we built, that was worth fighting for. We learned that strength is not about defeating others. It is about protecting what matters and knowing when to make peace." "A wise answer," Thalmos said. "My people came to conquer Earth. We thought we would teach you lessons about power and civilization. Instead, you taught us lessons about courage, determination, and mercy. You showed us that true civilization is not about dominating others. It is about respecting them." They stood at the memorial as the sun set, two former enemies who had become the closest of friends. Around them, humans and Velkari walked together, working together, living together. The war was history. The peace was the future. General Minho looked at the rebuilt city, at the people of different species sharing the streets, and he smiled. The war had been terrible, but what they built from its ashes was beautiful. They set out to conquer Earth, Minho said quietly, but humanity taught them a lesson they will never forget. Part 4. The Cost of War. 1 year into the war, Earth was dying. Not quickly, but slowly, like a wounded animal bleeding out. The Velkhari controlled the skies. Humanity controlled the ground. Neither side could deliver a final blow, so the fighting continued, grinding both civilizations down. General Minho stood in the ruins of Seoul. The city where he was born, where he had lived his entire life, was now mostly rubble. Orbital strikes had destroyed the tallest buildings. Streets were cratered from artillery. The underground bunkers remained, but the beautiful city above them was gone. He walked through the empty streets, his boots crunching on broken glass. Sometimes he wondered if winning this war even mattered anymore. What would be left when it was over? "General," a voice called. One of his officers approached. "We have new intelligence. The Velkhari are preparing another major offensive." Minho nodded tiredly. There was always another offensive, always another battle. The war had become a machine that consumed soldiers and cities, feeding on itself endlessly. In a medical facility deep underground, Lieutenant Hyon completed her physical therapy. Her new prosthetic arm was a marvel of engineering, built using a combination of human and captured Velkhari technology. It responded to her thoughts almost as well as her real arm had, but it was not the same. Nothing was the same anymore. A nurse brought her a tablet computer. "You have a message, Lieutenant." Hyon read the message and felt her heart sink. Her younger brother had been killed in action. He was a soldier in the ground forces fighting in Europe. The message said he died bravely. They all died bravely. It did not make them less dead. She sat alone in her room and cried for the first time since the war began. She cried for her brother. She cried for her destroyed city. She cried for the life she would never have, the future that was stolen from her and everyone else. When the tears stopped, something changed inside her. She was done crying. She wanted this war to end. Dr. Jiwon worked in a laboratory that existed only on paper. The original facility in Seoul was destroyed. Her team of 50 scientists had been reduced to 12. They moved from shelter to shelter, always one step ahead of Velkhari attacks, continuing their research. She had become obsessed with creating a weapon powerful enough to end the war. The EMP missiles helped, but they were not enough. She needed something bigger, something final. Her colleagues worried about her. She barely slept. She barely ate. All she did was work. "Doctor, you need to rest," one of her assistants said. "I will rest when this is over," Jiwon replied, not looking up from her calculations. She had an idea for a weapon that could disable an entire Velkhari ship permanently, but it required exotic materials that were almost impossible to obtain. It would also release radiation that might harm nearby humans. The ethical implications troubled her, but not as much as watching more people die every day. In orbit above Earth, Commander Thalmos faced his own crisis. The Velkhari High Command had summoned him home to explain why the conquest was taking so long. It should have been finished in months. It had been a year, and the humans still fought. "You have dishonored the Empire," the High Command leader told him via communication link. "You have lost more soldiers in this campaign than in the previous 10 combined. The humans are unlike any enemy we have faced," Thalmos tried to explain. "They do not fight honorably. They hide, they ambush, they use tactics that violate every principle of warfare." "You make excuses for weakness," the leader replied coldly. "We are recalling you. Another commander will finish what you failed to do." The communication ended. Thalmos stood alone on his bridge, feeling the weight of shame. In Velkhari culture, military failure was the greatest dishonor. He had brought shame to his family name, to his ancestors. Part of him wondered if the humans were right to resist. Part of him wondered if the Empire was worth serving. He pushed these thoughts away. They were dangerous, almost treasonous. While Thalmos prepared to leave, Earth prepared its most desperate gamble. Intelligence had discovered that the Velkhari were bringing a new weapon to the system. A planet killer. A massive ship carrying a weapon capable of cracking Earth's crust and making the planet uninhabitable. The weapon would take 3 days to charge after arriving. 3 days to find a way to destroy it, or humanity would lose everything. General Minho called an emergency meeting with military leaders worldwide. "We need to hit it with everything we have. Every missile, every ship, every soldier if necessary." It is a suicide mission, the Russian general stated. Then we die trying, Minho replied. Because if we do nothing, we die anyway. Plans were made. Resources were gathered. Every nation contributed what little they had left. Nuclear missiles that had been held in reserve were armed and prepared. Every pilot capable of flying took to their fighters. It would be the largest coordinated human attack in history. Yuna worked frantically to prepare a cyber weapon. If she could hack into the planet killer's systems, she might be able to buy the attack force a few extra seconds. A few seconds might be the difference between success and extinction. She had not slept in 2 days. Her eyes burned. Her hands shook from too much caffeine. But she kept typing, kept coding, kept fighting in the only way she knew how. The planet killer arrived on schedule, a ship so massive it blocked out stars. It moved slowly into position above Earth and began its charging sequence. Energy readings spiked. The weapon was preparing to fire. Launch everything, Minho ordered. From the ground, from the ocean, from underground silos, missiles rose into the sky, hundreds of them, carrying humanity's last hope. Fighter craft from every nation filled the air. Some were experimental prototypes. Some were old planes that barely flew. It did not matter. Everyone who could fight was fighting. Yuna launched her virus as the attack began. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the planet killer's shields flickered. Just for 3 seconds. But those 3 seconds were enough. The missiles struck. Nuclear warheads exploded against the hull. Conventional explosives found weak points. The EMP weapons disabled systems. The massive ship shuddered under the assault, its shields failing repeatedly as wave after wave of attacks hit it. But the Velkari defended their weapon. Energy beams filled space, destroying incoming missiles. Fighters engaged human pilots, shooting them down. For every hit the humans scored, they lost 10 ships. Lieutenant Hyun flew her modified fighter directly at the planet killer. Her squadron was gone, shot down around her. She was alone but not afraid. She thought of her brother. She thought of her destroyed home. She thought of all the people who had died. For Earth, she whispered. She fired her last missiles and did not pull away. The missiles hit the planet killer's power core just as her fighter crashed into it. The explosion was visible from the ground, a new star blooming in the sky. The planet killer broke apart. Pieces of it fell toward Earth, burning up in the atmosphere. The weapon was destroyed. The planet was saved, but the cost made Minho weep. Thousands of pilots dead, hundreds of missiles expended. Resources they could not replace. And Lieutenant Hyun, the brave pilot who had fought from the first day, was gone. In orbit, the Velkari fleet watched in shock. The humans had destroyed their ultimate weapon. Impossible, insane, suicidal, but successful. On the Velkari homeworld, news of the defeat caused political chaos. The empire was built on conquest and victory. Defeat was unthinkable, but it had happened. Worse, other conquered species heard the news and began rebelling. The empire faced threats from within and without. A new commander arrived to replace Thalmos. His name was Vekral, and he was known for brutality. He immediately ordered the complete destruction of 3 major Earth cities. Millions died in retaliation for destroying the planet killer. But even as he gave the orders, Vekral knew the truth. The Velkari could destroy Earth, but they could not conquer it. The humans would fight until every last one was dead, and such a war would cost the Velkari Empire more than it could afford. In his private quarters, Thalmos watched the destruction of Earth's cities. He had been relieved of command but was still on his ship, waiting to return home in disgrace. He felt sick watching the orbital bombardment. A communication request came through. It was from General Minho, sent on an open channel. "Commander Thalmos, I wish to speak with you." Thalmos hesitated, then accepted. Minho's face appeared on screen. He looked old and tired, as worn down as Thalmos felt. "What do you want, human?" "I want this war to end," Minho said simply. "We are both losing. Our people are dying. Your empire is crumbling. There must be another way." Thalmos wanted to dismiss him to close the channel, but he found himself listening. For the first time, he truly listened to a human speak. Part 3. Adaptation. 3 months had passed since the war began. Earth looked different now. Orbital satellites showed burn marks across continents where Velkari weapons had struck. Entire cities stood empty. Their populations fled to underground shelters. But the planet still fought. In laboratories around the world, scientists worked day and night. Dr. Jiwan's breakthrough with the shield frequency had been shared with every nation. American engineers built upon it. Chinese scientists refined it. Russian weapons manufacturers produced it. For the first time in human history, all of Earth's knowledge worked toward a single goal. The result was a new weapon. It looked like an ordinary missile, but it carried a special warhead. When it exploded near a Velkari shield, it would emit an electromagnetic pulse tuned to the exact frequency that disrupted their protection. For 3 seconds, the shield would fail. 3 seconds was enough. We are ready to test it. Jiwan reported to Minho during a video conference that included military leaders from 12 nations. Then we will use it in the field, replied an American general. We have identified a target, a Velkari supply depot on an island in the Pacific. Intelligence suggests they store fuel and ammunition there. Minho studied the map. The island was isolated and heavily defended. A direct assault would be suicide. But with the new weapon, they had a chance. I will lead the strike team, Minho said. Colonel, you are too valuable, the Korean general protested. That is exactly why I must go. Our soldiers need to see that their commanders are willing to take the same risks. Besides, I have been planning this for weeks. Nobody knows this mission better than I do. The room fell silent. Finally, the American general nodded. Good luck, Colonel. The mission launched 3 days later. Minho led a team of 40 soldiers, the best from 6 different nations. They traveled in stealth submarines, approaching the island underwater where Velkari sensors could not detect them. Above the ocean, Lieutenant Hyon flew with a squadron of fighters ready to provide air support. The plan was simple, but risky. Yuna had created a computer virus specifically designed to disable the island's defense systems for exactly 10 minutes. During that window, Minho's team would infiltrate the base, plant explosives, and escape before the Velkari realized what was happening. Everything depended on timing. Yuna, status? Minho whispered into his radio as his submarine approached the island. I am in their system, Yuna replied from her bunker in Seoul. Their security is tough, but not impossible. I need 2 more minutes. Those 2 minutes felt like hours. Minho watched the clock on his wrist, counting down each second. Around him, soldiers checked their weapons and equipment. Some prayed. Others were silent. All of them knew this mission might be their last. Done, Yuna finally said. You have 10 minutes starting now. The submarine surfaced. Soldiers emerged into the night air and swam toward the beach. The island was dark except for the glow of Velkari structures in the distance. Minho led his team forward, moving silently through the jungle. They reached the perimeter of the base. Guard towers stood empty, their automated systems disabled by Yuna's virus. Minho signaled his team forward. They moved like shadows, crossing open ground to reach the main storage facility. That was when everything went wrong. Alarms began blaring. Lights flooded the compound. Velkari soldiers poured from their barracks, weapons ready. Someone had triggered a backup security system that Yuna had not detected. Contact. We have contact! A soldier shouted. The battle erupted. Human soldiers fired their weapons at the Velkari, who returned fire with devastating energy beams. Minho saw 3 of his men fall in the first seconds, but they kept moving forward using the new EMP missiles. The first missile struck a group of Velkari soldiers. Their shields flickered and died. For 3 seconds, they were vulnerable. Human bullets found their targets. The aliens fell. Keep moving, Minho ordered. Get to the fuel storage. Half of his team provided covering fire, while the other half rushed toward the massive tanks that held the Velkari's antimatter fuel. These tanks were the key. Destroy them, and the Velkari fleet would be stranded in orbit without enough power to leave. Jiwan had designed special explosives for this mission. They had to be placed precisely, or they would not penetrate the tank walls. Minho and 5 others reached the tanks and began attaching the charges while explosions and gunfire echoed around them. Charges set, Minho reported. Fall back. But falling back was harder than advancing. The Velkari had organized their defense. They blocked the path to the beach. Minho's team was trapped between the enemy and the ocean. Hyun, we need air support now, Minho called. On our way, Hyun responded. Her squadron screamed across the sky, firing missiles at the Velkari positions. The new EMP weapons worked perfectly. Shields failed and the alien defenses crumbled under the assault. But the cost was high. Velkari fighters rose to meet them, and the sky became a chaotic battlefield. Minho's team used the distraction to break through. They ran for the beach as the timer on the explosives counted down. Behind them, Velkari soldiers gave chase. Energy beams struck the ground around them. 2 more soldiers fell. They reached the beach just as the explosives detonated. The fuel tanks exploded with a force that lit up the night sky. The blast wave knocked everyone to the ground. Minho looked back and saw a mushroom cloud rising from the island. Secondary explosions continued as ammunition and other supplies were consumed by fire. The Velkari pursuit stopped. The soldiers who had been chasing them were dead, killed by their own fuel explosion. "Get to the submarines," Minho ordered. Only 22 soldiers made it back to the submarines. Out of 40, 18 had died. But the mission was a success. The fuel depot was destroyed. The Velkari fleet would have to ration power. They could not launch major offensives for weeks, maybe months. As Minho's submarine dove beneath the waves, he allowed himself one moment of satisfaction. Then he thought of the 18 soldiers who would not be coming home. Victory always costs something. In orbit, Commander Thalmos stared at the burning island on his display screens. Rage and confusion warred within him. How had the humans penetrated their defenses? How had they known exactly where to strike? How had they destroyed shields that had protected Velkari forces for 300 years? "Get me answers," he roared at his officers. How did this happen? But there were no good answers. The humans were adapting faster than any enemy in Velkari history. Every advantage the Velkari had was being countered. Their shields were no longer absolute. Their weapons were being studied and copied. Their tactics were being predicted and defeated. For the first time in his life, Thalmos felt something he had never experienced before. Doubt. On Earth, news of the successful raid spread quickly. People celebrated in shelters and bunkers. For months, they had only heard of defeats and losses. Now finally, they had proof that humanity could strike back. But the celebration was brief. The Velkari responded with fury. They launched orbital bombardments on major cities, not caring anymore about avoiding civilian casualties. Millions died in the attacks. The message was clear. The Velkari would make Earth pay for every act of resistance. In her laboratory, G1 worked on the next generation of weapons. The EMP missiles had worked, but they required the missile to get close to the target. She needed something with longer range, something that could disable entire fleets at once. Lieutenant Hyon recovered in a medical facility. Her fighter had been shot down during the raid and she had ejected just in time. She survived but lost her right arm in the crash. Doctors said she would never fly again. She refused to accept that. Yuna continued her cyber warfare, launching new viruses into Velkari systems every day. Some were detected and stopped. Others slipped through. She was learning their security systems, finding more weaknesses. Every successful hack delayed Velkari operations and saved human lives. Colonel Minho, now promoted to general for his successful raid, coordinated with military leaders worldwide. They had proven humans could fight back. Now they needed to plan the next steps. The war was far from over, but for the first time, victory seemed possible. In space, something else was happening that neither side fully understood yet. Word of Earth's resistance was spreading across the galaxy. Other species conquered by the Velkari began to whisper in secret. If humans could fight back, perhaps they could too. The Velkari Empire, which had seemed invincible for centuries, was beginning to show cracks. Part 2, First Blood. The Velkari attack began at dawn. From orbit, their ships fired beams of concentrated energy that turned military bases into craters of melted metal and glass. Air Force bases in Nevada, Russia, and China disappeared in flashes of light. Naval fleets in the Pacific Ocean tried to shoot back, but their missiles exploded harmlessly against invisible shields surrounding the alien ships. In Seoul, alarms screamed throughout the military complex. Minho watched the destruction on multiple screens, his face grim. Dozens of bases destroyed in minutes. Thousands of soldiers dead. The Velkari were proving their power just as they promised. They are landing ground forces, an analyst reported. 12 locations around the world. Remote areas, probably to establish bases. "Show me," Minho ordered. The screens changed to show satellite images of Velkari landing craft touching down in forests, deserts, and mountains. Soldiers in advanced armor emerged carrying weapons that glowed with blue energy. They moved with confidence, expecting no real resistance. They were wrong. At a landing site in the mountains of Pakistan, Velkari soldiers spread out to secure the area. The forest seemed quiet. Too quiet. Then the trees exploded with gunfire. Human soldiers had hidden themselves, waiting. The Velkari shields protected them from most bullets. but the surprise attack forced them to take cover. One Velkari soldier fell when a rocket-propelled grenade hit him directly. His shield had stopped the first shot, but human soldiers had learned quickly. They fired in concentrated bursts at single targets, overwhelming the shields. The Velkari began to retreat toward their landing craft. Similar scenes happened at other landing sites. The aliens had better technology, but humans had the advantage of knowing their own terrain. They used ambushes, traps, and tactics the Velkari had never encountered. The proud alien warriors found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to stand still and face them properly. In the skies above Seoul, Lieutenant Hyon climbed into her fighter jet. It was a modified F-35, upgraded with everything the engineers could add in 72 hours. Experimental missiles, better radar, and a prayer that it would be enough. Eagle Squad, this is command, Minho's voice came through her headset. Velkari fighters are entering your airspace. Your mission is to engage and observe, learn their patterns, understand their weaknesses. Do not sacrifice yourselves unnecessarily. Understood, Command, Hyon replied. She took a deep breath and launched into the gray morning sky. Within minutes, she saw them. Velkari interceptors were sleek triangular craft that moved impossibly fast. They flew in perfect formation, their movements coordinated like a dance, beautiful and deadly. Eagle Squad, engage on my mark, Hyon commanded. Her squadron of 12 fighters spread out. Remember, hit and run. Do not let them surround you. The fight began. Hyon fired her first missile, watching it streak toward a Velkari fighter. The alien craft dodged easily, moving faster than should be possible, but that was fine. The missile was just a distraction. While the Velkari fighter dodged, Hyon's wingman fired from another angle. This missile struck the shields, creating a flash of energy but doing no real damage. The Velkari returned fire. Blue energy beams cut through the air. One of Hyun's pilots screamed as his fighter was hit. The plane exploded in a ball of fire. Then another went down. And another. Break formation. Scatter. Hyon shouted. The remaining fighters split in different directions, using unpredictable movements. The Velkari tried to follow, but their perfect formation became a disadvantage. They were trained to fight enemies who flew in organized patterns. Human desperation created chaos they could not easily handle. Hyon dove toward the ground, pushing her fighter to maximum speed. A Velkari craft followed. She flew between buildings under bridges, forcing the alien pilot to follow her into the city where speed alone was not enough. She needed skill and courage to navigate the obstacles. The Velkari pilot was good, but not good enough. He clipped a building with his wing and his shield flared. For just a second, the shield was down. Hyon fired everything she had. The Velkari fighter exploded. It was the first alien craft destroyed by a human pilot. But the victory was bitter. Hyon looked at her radar and saw only 4 friendly signals remaining. Out of 12 fighters, 8 were gone. Eagle Squad, returned to base, Minho ordered. His voice was heavy. While the battles raged outside, Yuna worked in a different kind of war. She sat in front of multiple computer screens, her fingers flying across keyboards. For hours, she had been studying the Velkari communication signals, looking for patterns. Alien technology was strange, but it still followed rules. It still used mathematics and logic. And where there was logic, there were vulnerabilities. She found one. A small gap in their encryption. Not enough to read their messages, but enough to cause interference. Yuna created a virus, a digital weapon designed to spread through their network slowly. It would not shut down their systems immediately. That would make them notice and fix it. Instead, it would cause tiny errors. Wrong coordinates, delayed orders, small problems that would grow larger over time. With a final keystroke, she launched the virus into space, aiming it at the nearest Velkari ship. Then she waited. In orbit, Thalmos reviewed the battle reports with growing frustration. His forces had won every major engagement. Human bases were destroyed. Human ships were sunk. Human fighters were shot down. By every measure, the Velkari were victorious. But the casualties bothered him. 47 Velkari soldiers dead. 12 fighters destroyed. These numbers were small, but they were wrong. Previous conquests had cost almost nothing. The enemy would see Velkari power and submit. These humans saw Velkari power and fought harder. Commander, the ground forces are requesting reinforcements, an officer reported. The humans are using guerrilla tactics. They attack and disappear. Our soldiers cannot engage them in proper combat. Tell them to burn the forests, Thalmos ordered. If the humans hide like insects, we will smoke them out. But before the order could be carried out, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Multiple systems were reporting minor errors. Nothing critical but unusual. Thalmos frowned. Velkari technology did not malfunction. On Earth, Dr. G1 worked in her laboratory with what remained of her team. They had collected debris from a Velkari fighter that crashed in the ocean. Now they studied it piece by piece, trying to understand how it worked. The shield generator was the key. G1 could see that it created an energy field by projecting waves at a specific frequency. The frequency was incredibly high, far beyond what human technology normally used, but that also meant it had limitations. If we can match the frequency, G1 explained to her team, we can disrupt the shields. Not permanently, but for a few seconds, long enough to get through. How do we generate that kind of frequency? An assistant asked. G1 smiled. We use their own technology against them. Look at this power cell. If we overload it with an electromagnetic pulse, it will emit the exact frequency we need before it explodes. It was dangerous. It was experimental. But it was also hope. She called Minho immediately. Colonel, I have something. Give me 2 weeks and I can create a weapon that will penetrate their shields. You have 1 week, Minho replied. The world is burning, Doctor. We need that weapon. As the first day of war ended, the scorecard was clear. The Velkari had destroyed hundreds of military targets. They controlled the orbital space around Earth. Their shields remained unbreached by conventional weapons. But humanity had learned valuable lessons. They learned that Velkari shields could be overwhelmed with concentrated fire. They learned that alien soldiers could be killed with the right tactics. They learned that Velkari technology, while advanced, was not perfect. Most importantly, they learned that the Velkari expected obedience, not resistance. Every hour that humans fought back, every small victory, no matter how costly, was proof that Earth would not surrender. In the bunker, Minho stood before a map of the world covered in red and blue markers. Red showed Velkari positions. Blue showed human forces. There was much more red than blue, but Minho had studied military history his entire life. He knew that wars were not won by the side with better weapons. Wars were won by the side that refused to quit. Prepare our counterattack, he ordered. Target their supply depot. If we cannot match their technology, we will starve them of resources. The war was just beginning. Part 1. The Arrival. The stars rippled like water disturbed by stones. From the darkness of space, massive ships emerged one after another. They were beautiful and terrible at the same time, with sleek metal hulls that gleamed under distant starlight. The fleet hung at the edge of Earth's solar system like predators watching their prey. On the bridge of the largest ship, Commander Thalmos stood with his arms crossed behind his back. He was tall, even by Velkari standards, with silver skin that showed his high rank. His eyes scanned the displays showing a small blue planet in the distance, Earth. The reports called it a primitive world, divided into hundreds of nations that fought among themselves. Perfect for conquest, huh? How long until we reach their planet? Thalmos asked. 3 days at current speed, Commander, his second officer replied. Thalmos smiled. 3 days until the Velkari Empire added its 48th conquered world. His ancestors would be proud. For 300 years, his people had spread across the stars, bringing civilization to primitive species. Some joined willingly. Most did not. It made no difference. The Velkari always won. Send them our message, Thalmos ordered. On Earth, it was an ordinary Tuesday morning when everything changed. People went to work, children attended school, and politicians argued about taxes and borders. Then the message arrived. Every screen on the planet displayed the same thing. Every radio played the same voice. The message was simple and direct. People of Earth, I am Commander Thalmos of the Velkari Empire. Your world is now under our protection. You have 72 hours to surrender your weapons and accept our rule. If you refuse, we will demonstrate the consequences. This is your only warning. The message repeated in every language. Panic spread faster than any virus. Stock markets crashed. Religious leaders prayed. Military bases went to full alert. And in government buildings around the world, people who usually could not agree on anything suddenly found themselves united by a common threat. In Seoul, South Korea, Colonel Minho sat in an underground bunker with dozens of other officers. He was 43 years old with gray hair at his temples and sharp eyes that missed nothing. For 20 years, he had studied military history and strategy. He had trained for wars against other nations, never against aliens from space. They want us to surrender in 3 days, a general said, his voice shaking slightly. What can we possibly do? We say no, Minho replied calmly. Everyone turned to look at him. Colonel, did you see their ships? Our satellites counted over 200 vessels. Each one is larger than our biggest aircraft carrier. They have weapons we cannot even understand. I saw them, Minho said. I also saw that they gave us a warning. If they truly wanted to destroy us, they would have already done it. They think we will surrender because we are afraid. We need to show them they are wrong. Before anyone could respond, the door opened. A young woman entered, looking slightly out of place among the military officers. She wore civilian clothes and carried a tablet computer. This was Dr. Jiwon, one of Korea's leading scientists in quantum physics. She was only 32 but had already published papers that impressed people around the world. I apologize for being late, Jiwon said. I came as soon as I received the message. Doctor, can we fight them? The general asked directly. Jiwon considered the question carefully. Their technology is more advanced than ours. But technology alone does not win wars. Strategy, creativity, and determination matter too. If we can learn how their weapons work, we might find weaknesses. We need time, Minho added. Time to study them. Time to prepare. Time to coordinate with other nations. Then we need pilots, another officer said. Someone brave enough to engage their fighters to observe them up close. I will do it, said a voice from the back of the room. A young woman in a flight suit stood up. Lieutenant Hyeon was 28 years old and one of the best pilots in the Korean Air Force. She had logged more flight hours than anyone her age and had never lost a training exercise. With respect, Lieutenant. This is not training, the general said. I know, sir. But someone has to be first. Someone has to show them we are not afraid. The general looked at Minho, who nodded slightly. Sometimes courage was more important than perfect planning. Very well. Begin preparing a squadron. We will give you our best modified fighters. As the meeting continued, another person was called to join the team. Yuna was 26 years old and worked for the National Intelligence Service. She was a specialist in computer systems and artificial intelligence. Her job was to protect South Korea's networks from hackers. Now she had a much bigger challenge. When she arrived at the bunker, Minho explained what they needed. We need to understand their communication systems. Can you intercept their signals? Yuna pulled out her laptop and began typing. Their signals use frequencies we do not normally monitor, but I can adapt our satellites. Give me 12 hours. You have 6, Minho said. Yuna nodded and got to work. Around the world, similar scenes played out. In Washington, generals mobilized the military. In Moscow, scientists gathered to study the alien message. In Beijing, hackers worked to break alien codes. In Geneva, diplomats tried to organize a unified response. Humanity had never cooperated like this before. It took an alien threat to unite them. The 72 hours passed quickly. The Velkari fleet moved closer to Earth, expecting surrender. Instead, they received a simple message from the United Nations. No, we refuse your demand. Earth is our home and we will defend it. On his ship, Thalmos read the message with surprise. Then he laughed. They refuse. These primitives actually believe they can fight us. His officers laughed too. It would make the victory more satisfying. Advance the fleet to Earth orbit, Thalmos commanded. Prepare to demonstrate our power. Target their military bases. Avoid population centers for now. Let them watch their defenses crumble. Then they will beg to surrender. The Velkari ships moved forward, engines glowing bright blue. They descended toward the blue planet, ready to show humanity its place in the universe. But in the bunker in Seoul, Minho watched the approaching ships on his screens. He was afraid. Anyone with sense would be afraid. But he was also determined. Next to him, Jiwon analyzed data from satellites. Hyun prepared her fighter for launch. Yuna typed commands into her computer, searching for any advantage. They were outnumbered. They were outgunned. By every logical calculation, they could not win, but they were human. And humans did not surrender easily. The war for Earth was about to begin.